Well, welcome back. I'm Sam Molitas. I'm here with author Stefan Malecek, and we are talking about his life and his story, Crazy Tales of Combat Psychiatry. And so you landed back in San Francisco. Let's go a little bit back again.
Okay.
After your tour in Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
And what was that like?
Amazing. Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I felt, on one level, I felt really dislocated because I have this, I have just no hair. I weighed 150 pounds. I was completely jaundiced. People, my own father didn't know me. I got home, I went to my father's house, I knocked on the door, and he peeks out the blinds and says, "Yes, may I help you?" I said, "Hey, Pop, it's me." Didn't even recognize me, you know, because I had just kicked an opium habit just before I came home, and I was about this big around, you know. You can count all my ribs. I used to do that. I used to go 1, 2, 3, 4. I used to count my ribs, just for something, you know. And so here I, you know, and I wanted more than anything to be hip.
Well, I mean, I imagine coming from Vietnam straight to San Francisco, which is...
Actually, I was in the Bay Area for about a month, and then I went back to St. Louis to tie some, just to be done, you know. And then I came back, you know, to the city.
Still.
Oh, yeah, I know. It was radical.
Yes.
It was radical.
Yeah.
Especially then, because, you know, you could feel, the revolution was in the air, man. Everywhere you went, you could feel it, you could smell it, you could taste it. It was like, we're going to bring it down, man. This is going to really happen. We're going to change the world.
And were you involved in?
Oh, very much so.
In the household, were you involved?
Well, I mean...
Stuff that you can mention.
Well, okay, yeah. I mean, see, there was really, basically, there were two schools. There were the politicals and there were the spirituals. Pretty much, and there was a split because people who were espousing like sort of what we now call New Age philosophy and living sort of a, quote, hippie lifestyle, were not interested in being political. And the people who were political, you know, said, "Oh, no, you know, no, you know, none for me." Or if they smoked weed, it was like with other politicals, and it was like all this high-level dialectic and talking about Marx and Engels and, you know, reading socialist philosophies and, you know, being, you know, revolutionary in the true sense of that word. You know, a lot of civil disobedience and violence was being planned and perpetrated because, you know, it was coming down. And the only way to bring it down was violent revolution, man. And so I kind of vacillated between both camps because I still do in many ways, have a foot in either camp. But the main thing that united everybody was the music. And so I used to go to the Fillmore Ballroom, man, in San Francisco every Thursday and Sunday night, man, because it got popular around late 68. And all the plastic people, we used to call them plastic people, they would all the suburban hippies would show up on Friday and Saturday nights, you know, come in from the suburbs and, you know, dress up in their brand new bell-bottoms and blah, blah, blah. So I stopped going, many of the really hip people I knew stopped going on Friday and Saturday nights. And so we'd go on Thursday and Sunday nights. So I probably went, not every weekend, but probably most weekends, every Thursday and Sunday night I was at the Fillmore, blasting out on acid usually or something and listening to, you know, premier primetime rock and roll. And that was the thing that united the culture in many ways, was the music, because, you know, Stephen Gaskin used to say when he was doing Monday night class at the Old Straight Theater on Haight Street, he'd say, drug dealers and rock and roll musicians are the vanguard of the revolution, you know, and it felt that way. I mean, you walk, especially in San Francisco, man, you walk around and it was clear that something was changing big time. You know, it was just take the lid off, bam. You know, everything shifted. You know, everything shifted. And then, you know, for me, having been in the NAM, I mean, for me, I always describe it, this is why people have difficulty with returning vets, is they say, well, why can't you be normal? Why can't you go back to your old way of life? Why can't you get your job like everybody else, blah, blah, blah. I mean, how ludicrous. You've lived for some period of time with no rules, where the only rule was to stay alive. And the only people that mattered were the people that were around you. The media wants it to be, mom and baseball and apple pie, but it really was about your brothers. It was really about the people that you were around. Because that was your whole world. That was your whole world right there. And and anything that we did, heroic or otherwise, was to survive. It's the only thing that mattered. And everybody said, I want to get out of here. I want to go home. I want to go back to the world. I talk about this a little bit in here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was always about the world, the land of the big PX.
What is it you use? It's phrased in there. The highest rank is civilian.
It's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. That's right. The highest rank there is civilian. I outrank the 5-star generals, man.
And so you talk about brotherhood. Are you still in contact with the men you served with? Not so much. Other vets, yeah, I know lots and lots of. I know vets everywhere. I'm in touch with lots of vets, and there's always the connection. There's always a connection. So everywhere I go, and I always make a point. I see somebody wearing like Vietnam vet, hat, or World War II. I ran into this crippled up old World War II guy on two canes, man. And I just walked up to him and said, "Welcome home, sir." I make a point of that every time I see a vet. I welcome home. Mm-hmm. Welcome home. Now, do you know, are there many vets here on Maui?
Oh God, lots of vets. Lots, and I don't know. I couldn't even guesstimate. So there's 140,000 people on the island. Let's say roughly 60,000 men, 80,000 women, including children. So I have no way of guessing except that I meet lots of vets. So I'm guessing maybe 10% of the male population of Maui, maybe neighborhood. I have no way of knowing.
Have you done anything counseling-wise or anything involving the vets here?
I've got a project I'm trying to get started through the Vet Center to do a writing class for vets, journaling, doing stories, kind of maybe creating a writing group. I'm still trying to hook it up with the Vet Center. They have to figure out a way to accommodate me. Especially apparently there's some new rule that says if you can't volunteer anymore, you have to be paid even as a volunteer. And so even if I said I don't want to be paid, it doesn't matter. The G says that you got to pay volunteers now, minimum wage. So yeah, and that's a big hang up for a lot of organizations that used to really thrive on volunteerism. And for me, it's like, I don't need the money, I want to give. I want to give. It's my thing, is I want to give. It's important. Especially being an elder, I really feel like, these elder spaces, that's the giveaway space. My Native American friends always say you're a child until you're 50. And when you take as much as you want. But when you hit 50, you got to start giving it back.
So if you had, with that in mind, if you had no fear or no fear of failure, what would you do?
Oh my God. Wow. I think I'm doing it. I've waited my whole life. I've always said that I've always worked to support my writing habit. And finally, in January 14, I just said, that's it, I'm done. I closed my private practice in December of 13, came here, said, that's it, I'm going to finally have a chance. I'm going to read and write and watch videos and catch up on all the films that I've missed over the last 30 or 40 years, and write. And so since okay, so the first 10 months I was on Maui, I was severely depressed, and that started breaking in November of 14. And by January, so between January and May of 14, I wrote Transforming Your Retirement, talking about coming out of that depression and the illusions of retirement, transforming your retirement from blues to bliss. And I got interested in this book, no, not this book, excuse me, my book Crucible of Shame, kind of I've been working on since 2008. I finished that off. And I got a little bored, and I said, okay, I'm going to look at this. This book actually grew out of the first draft was 1979, and I've written 23 drafts of this book. This is the 23rd draft. And I said, I'll just do a little editing, and I started editing, and then next thing you know, I launched into it, and I finished this. I completely rewrote this book in 90 days. So I really feel like I've always wanted to be, I've always been a writer. I've always wanted to be an author. I've always wanted to be, you know, a published writer, a published author, and, you know, read and write for a living, and that's, you know, what I'm aiming at.
Fantastic.
That's what I want to do.
Fantastic.
So yeah. And I have fear in spite of that. I have fear of failure, but, you know, I don't care because I have to go for it.
And so how many published books do you have now?
Yeah. None at the moment.
Okay.
I have 3 that are in the pipeline. This will be the first, and hopefully you'll have to talk to my business partner about dates, sure. But we're looking at probably the 15th of September on this one. And what's next is up in the air, you know, but probably Crucible maybe by Christmas. Mm-hmm. And then Transforming Your Retirement, they may flip-flop. I'm not sure about that one yet. And then I have another book that another old one of my 4th novel. I've written 7 novels, none of them have been published. My 4th novel called Unwitting Witness, about a murder on a psychiatric unit witnessed by one of the patients, and nobody believes her.
So like a psychological thriller mystery sounds.
Sure. Like. Yeah. So that's my next project. I'm actually working on a sequel to Crucible 2 called Learning to Love Me is the Hardest Thing I've Ever Done. Because that's the question. People who've read Crucible say, okay, now I'm acquainted with shame. Now, so what? What do I do? How do I heal this? What do I do to work on this? So I started writing, you know, Learning to Love Me in order to answer those questions. So
it sounds like you're pretty busy with your writing, which is great. Mm-hmm. What do you do with your extra free time? In addition to, you said you mentioned the Mankind Project.
Yes.
And volunteering.
Actually, I'm working part-time at Aloha House. You know, I do sporadically, you know, sometimes as much as 2 shifts a week, and sometimes I have 2 weeks off, you know, but I fill in. I'm a just sort of on-call person at Aloha House. Mm-hmm. I work, you know, even in spite of in spite of my education and everything else, I'm a mental health worker. You know, so I do like all the support work and the paperwork and blah, 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 blah.
And you mentioned in 2008 you got involved with the Mankind Project. Mm-hmm. And how did that come about?
Oh my, let's see. Another vet friend of mine, we had tried to start men's groups like 4 different times. And sometimes he and I were the only ones that showed up. You know, we'd failed like 4 times, and they're like, let's try one more time. So put out all these flyers and phone calls, and 13 people show up. I go, oh my God. This guy's sitting next to me. I said, I don't know what to do. I've never run a men's group. He goes, no problem. I've run a lot of them. It's like, far out. Turns out he's Daryl Grotehouse, who's now, he's a retired full leader in Mankind Project. And so that's what's, you know, and it's kind of a funny story. So he's, you know, so we had a meeting. 2 weeks later, we had another meeting, and that was a Sunday night. And he said, listen, there's this training coming up next weekend. He said, I think it'd be good for you. I'm like, okay, blah, blah, blah. He said, but you got to let me know by noon tomorrow. This is like 9 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night, Sunday night. He said, I would say 9 o'clock in the morning, except I know you don't like to get up. I was like, okay. So I called him the next morning at like 8:30. He goes, "What are you doing up?" I said, "Man, I had all these dreams." I said, "Really?" And I'm not going to go into details here, but I said, "Do you really blah, blah, blah?" And he goes, who you been talking to? I said, "Nobody, man. I told you I had 5 dreams about this weekend. Do you really do so-and-so?" And he goes, "Yeah, how do you know?" I said, "I dreamed it." He said, "Dude, I'm coming right over. I'm going to sign you up." So that next weekend I went to my initiation.
And what was it about this initiation that struck a chord in you that you're still doing it today?
I think that it was probably the first time in my whole life when I felt like I was around, that in spite of feeling unworthy and less than, I was around men who acknowledged me as equal and valid. And and no one shamed me, no one put me down, no one, quote, made fun of me, whatever. Everyone took me seriously and allowed me to really be completely real about what I was feeling and express it, and honored that and encouraged me. And I was like, oh my God, It was like, in many ways, the first time in my whole life I ever experienced that.
Well, it sort of reminds me of what you talk about brotherhood in your book.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And really, I've really been looking for that level of connection ever since Annam, really, in many ways. So I always hooked. I mean, through the years, I've always hooked up with vets. It's always been vets. Always had vets in my life. Most of the people, not most. Well, prior to coming to Maui, most of the people I knew were always vets. And I'd say probably about 50% of the people I'm close with on Maui are vets. But Mankind Project Net has been consistently, supportive, uplifting, liberating, freeing me, allowing me the opportunity to free myself.
Now there are groups here on Maui, but you did your initiation in the mainland.
Yes, in Camp Wairiki, Washington, Southern Washington. But we do them here too. In fact, we have a training coming up first part of November. And anybody listening who might be interested should get in touch with Sam or me, or LT. Give us a call, and glad to talk to you about it.
And eldership is a important part of Mankind Project.
In some ways, I really think that in many ways that the elders are the core. We're the if you went to a maypole, for example, we'd be the pole. Everybody's kind of dancing around, everybody's doing all their activities, and we've all been young men. So we've done all that crazy shit, stuff, and been there, done that, and especially when you acknowledge yourself as an elder, the whole point is the giveaway. I'm here to, I had a young Afghan, Iraqi vet. I was working with him, trying to help get his 100%, and he said, "Why are you helping me, man? You don't even hardly know me." And I said, "I'm twice as old as you are. I've made twice as many mistakes as you have." And I said, "And if I can't pass along to you what I've learned, this distilled essence of my learning, then I might as well have lived my life in vain. Because when I die, it'll be gone, man. But if I can pass it on to you, it'll keep living." And that's kind of how, really, in some ways, one becomes immortal.
That's true eldership right there.
Yeah, thank you. I love being an elder. I'm really proud of it. I really love being an elder.